Hey everybody, welcome back to the Multifamily Live podcast. This is Morgan Hamer, the production manager of 7-Figure Flipping and 7-Figure Multifamily. Y'all, Multifamily Live 2023 is just a few weeks away. Have you gotten your ticket yet? If you haven't, check the link in the show notes to this episode. If you're still on the fence about attending, check out this presentation from Jason Yarusi from last year's Multifamily Live on asset management. This is an incredible presentation. Jason has a ton more value just like this that he's bringing to this year's Multifamily Live. It's happening June 1st through June 3rd in Franklin, Tennessee, just under Nashville.
I'm going to talk a lot about asset management. So in terms of the term asset management, remember, there's this great feeling about getting the deal, right? So we get the deal. We see a lot. If you see a lot of other people that are active in the multifamily community online, right? There's always the talk is that today we've closed on the deal. Today we're celebrating the deal, right? But then we never hear anything else. Never hear anything else. So it just must have been magical. They got the deal and then that's it, right? And so I equated to that journey of imagine, you spend all the time to get up to be a pro baseball player. You get to the major leagues, right? And you're like, I'm here. And you get up to bat and you're like, okay, I'm here. And then you never bat. You just go off, right? Because there's still the journey of where you have to go with the property. And that's where asset management continues to take on there. But the asset management piece is a lot more just of the part of the property once you get the property. There's a lot more involved, and we're going to dive into a lot of the details today about what it is, how to utilize it, and how to be the most efficient, whether it's going to be you, a member of your team, a partner, how to make this role really perform to make this property the best it can possibly be here. So what is asset management? Well, it monitors the economic and operating performance of the property. Ultimately here, you're going to have a point where you're going to say, okay, the property's got to, of course, operate, one, from a financial perspective, but two, from a logistics perspective. It creates and oversees and monitors the workflow of the property, right? So we have a point where you have a lot of different factions here, right? You have your leasing people, you have your maintenance people, you, in fact, also have your contractors, right? Now, these may be contractors that are doing extended projects. Maybe they're doing a whole renovations and it's a couple years process here, or they're doing things that might be short term, right? Replacing roofs, replacing windows, doing parking lots, right? But you are overseeing this. And you ask here, well, is this supposed to be the property manager? Well, you're going to oversee this even if they're carrying out that role, and we'll get into exactly what the property manager does. You're overseeing the process of the property from the acquisition to the disposition, but you're also working on the acquisition side with the people who are finding the deals, doing the due diligence, because you are the ones who are going to have to make sure this plan is being implemented, so you want to actually make sure that it's a plan that can actually be accomplished here. So you're aiming to achieve the goals and the objectives for the owners and the investors. Now, you might be one of those owners, but as you grow, this will become a role in your team here, a role as part of your process for someone that's going to be on your team that's going to fulfill this role for you in the future. This is an integral role here because you have to make sure that the steps of the plan are working accordingly, keeping on time. And if they're not, why aren't they? And how can we adjust to make sure they work, to make sure they get us to the goal ahead? Typical asset management fee, honestly, is usually between 1.5 and 2% of collected income, right? So this is usually a role that can be sustained. It's one that you can make some other earnings or some other revenue for you as a partner here, but it's also as you build up and have thousands of units, as some of you will very shortly, that you will have a role in your team here that this percentage can pay for that team member here because they can manage maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 properties for you. Is this property management? No, it's not property management. The property management handles the day-to-day. You were working on the flow of the investment here, the cycle of the investment, the parts of the process, and overseeing property management and working with them to achieve the goals and the plans of the owners. Now, as you work with the property management company here, you want to make sure that they are doing the steps in line of the process they need to do on a day-to-day basis. So as asset management here, you are not collecting rent from tenants here. You are not working with maintenance each day. You are working on the overall flow of the process, making sure that the process is being implemented effectively, and it's also continues to be the best process for the project ahead. Questions to ask property management. What is your experience in a multifamily asset class? Again, yesterday we talked about working with property managers here, and if there's going to be various levels. There's going to be some that are good for single family, some that are good for mid-tier, of course, investments, whether it be 10 to 30 units, some that are going to be just good for 100 unit plus properties. Some are going to be very good for new construction. Some are going to be very good working with projects that do a lot of government assistance. Some are going to be good for Class A projects where other really excel in maybe C-class properties, right? So you want to understand what's their track record. You also want to be able to work with them to understand what's their bandwidth. Well, I'm going to buy a 100 unit apartment building and they only have a bunch of 4 units, right? Maybe they have 100 units that are all 4 units. They have 25 4-unit buildings on their property. Well, now they're going to have to double just to keep up with your operations. You want to make sure as asset management that the team that you're going to work with here to fulfill the practices of day-to-days are going to be able to utilize to scale with you. I always want to be basically, when I bring on a property, I bring on a property management company here, I just want to be a speed bump coming into the process. I don't want to hear, oh, yes, we can figure it out. We can grow with you, right? I need them to have grown already, gone through their life cycle of expanding their property and their company here and not learn on my dime or my investors' dimes. What is the software that property management company uses here? I want to know that we had a good question yesterday, what's preferred property management software? Well, if they're a big company, a reputable company, they already have a dialed in process. I don't want to tell them the process. I want to know what's their process. I want to tell them what I want. I want real-time information. I want to work with them effectively. I want to be able to go in there and see if I need to pull a rent roll or I need to find what collections are. I need to find what's the repair list, currently active work order list. I can find that within the process because it's real-time software. I also want to schedule calls with them weekly. We have a call each week with each company, honestly, for each property to understand the workflow. We have a very systematic approach. How can you stay up to date on properties when you are not there locally? You have updated calls here. You make regular visits to the market, the more intensive of the properties early on, to understand actually the workflow of the property and how it's being implemented. We want to understand what's in-house. Do they have repairmen in-house? Do they handle any parts of the construction in-house? What do they fee out or what do they bill out or what do they not handle? What pieces of the items will be additional to their process? And what is their fee structure? They may say they only take 2 to 3% or they make 10%. As we saw earlier with the 24 unit, it was a higher property management fee, but as you could see that part of the operations, I had very little payroll because it was all running out of the main office right there. So their fee was a little bit higher here, but when you dial out that they weren't charging me for a payroll on site, it averaged out to a lower overall fee if you were to go in reverse and actually put that in. So understanding their fee and how they build is going to help you have the best idea about how your costs will run for your property here. What else does asset management do? Well, you do the planning. You do property inspections. You do the income and expense verification, right? Oh, it says this amount of money comes in here. Well, you want to understand, is that the amount of money comes in, right? You can check bank statements when you're helping taking on the property here. You can go and look at collections. You can see what's being deposited. You can look at leases and get lease validations here. If you have a property here you're bringing on that's on month to month, you may go in there and get a stop loss from tenants, right? To clarify and to certify that that's the amount tenants are paying. You can buy a building. I had a building once where the lady's been there 30 years, right? The only lease they had on record, she was paying like something like $160. So it was like 30 years ago, right? Now she's paying like $700. Well, the only lease that validates anything was saying that she paid $160, even though a rent roll, which you could just print out and just make up, said $700. So we went and got a stop loss to make sure that she was actually saying that she does pay $700. So we didn't take over the property and have the worst case circumstance came over. And well, the only lease I have is from 30 years ago. And see, it said I pay $160. That's what I pay. So you want to get clarity and confidence in what is happening on the project. The budgeting. What is the budget? There's going to be one for you, your plan with takeover, for your rent increases, for your budget in terms of what you expect you can do with the expenses, but also on your capital expenditures. You've worked with your team to create that construction budget to say, okay, we anticipate we're going to spend X on the roof. We're going to spend X on the windows. We're going to spend X in the parking lot. We're going to spend X on the landscape. We're going to spend X on new signage, new marketing for the property. Internally, we're going to work in the hallways. We're going to spend X in the hallways, right? We're going to spend X for redoing flooring for units. We're going to spend X for doing painting in the units. We're going to do, of course, the cabinets, the countertops, the fixtures, right? This is going to be all the items we have in there. That's going to be our budget. And testing that budget to make sure, one, we have enough money, but also what's that going to be that return on the money spent. We look to see that we can get our money back in 3 to 5 years on basically the rent increase based on the capital we'll put into a unit. So if we're going to go in there and say it cost us, let's say it's $100 rent bump and it's going to cost us $3,000 to do the interior rent bump to get that $100. Well, in fact, if you do that, that $100 rent bump, you'll make on average $1,200 more a year. Well, that $1,200 times 3 gets our money back in a little under 3 years, right? So that would be a good deal for us because we'd say that'd be money well spent. So we want to be into 3 to 5 years return on our money. So that helps us look at our investments to say, okay, what would not be a good investment? Well, if we're going to hold it forever, maybe we could look at solar. But typically the cost for something like solar might be pretty extensive, right, for us to put in there if we're going to hold it for 3 or 5 years. Also, we talked earlier about pools. If we don't feel that we can get our return back on that cost of putting in a pool, we probably won't do it. Sometimes you can even look at some of your renovation packages here. If I'm going to have to spend $10,000 to get that $100 rent bump, or I could spend $200 to get $25. Well, I may just spend that $200 to get that $25, right? It looks like money better spent that way, right? So you want to test everything that's happening in terms of your process. Say, okay, what do we need to maximize this investment? And that's going to be part of our takeover plan and our repositioning plan. We want to work with the team or work with the contractors to understand their bandwidth. If we have to turn 100 units here, well, how many contractors do we have? How many units do we feel can happen per month, right? Do we feel like we can go and renovate 20 units a month? That's great. Okay, fantastic. Maybe we can. But on the other side, does leasing feel they have the marketing plan in place that they can go lease 20 units a month? It's a hand in hand here that we constantly want to work with to understand, okay, yes, maybe we can do the work. But on the other front, can leasing get it done to get all these units on board? Can the market absorb having basically 20 units come on board that will be an additional $300, $400, $500 in rent bump that month? Can this absorption happen, right? So you want to test case this market. You want to be able to proof this out. Because if our plan is we're going to go in there and over the course of 5 months, we're going to renovate 100 units, and we find out in the first month we do 20 units, just for so fact that of those 20 renovated units, only 4 lease, well, then we have an issue, right? Because now we're going to get to month 2, have anticipated doing another 20 units, and we're still stating on 16 that haven't rented. So we need to test case our plan prior to putting the plan in process to make sure on both sides everything's hand in hand working together. And what are our loan requirements? You may have a agency debt, and an agency debt's going to want a certain vacancy level. They're not going to be happy if that within month 3 you're at a 60% occupancy, even though if you have this whole great plan in place. So you want to make sure that your loan is going to be okay with your business plan. They may not work very well if you sink that occupancy very low, even if you could get these rent bumps. They may say, well, hey, what's happening, right? So that might be a part of point with the lender. So understanding your loan requirement, and how can that work best with your project. So you can make sure that when you're putting a project in place with the loan, that's going to work best for the investment. All right, operations. We're going to evaluate the performance against the pro forma, right? So we've now, prior slide, worked on our planning, right? Worked on our planning and said, okay, great. Now the plan's going in process, right? Now we're in operations time. Is everything tracking to the plan? Okay, it is. Maybe we're exceeding the plan, but maybe we're not. What is keeping us from meeting that plan? What is keeping us from getting to that purpose of being able to take action and get to that next step? right? Did we overshoot on how much our budget was needed? Did we say, okay, we don't have enough capital in place for this? Can we actually change our renovation plan to get the same approach here without spending as much money? Do we need to bring on an additional contractor here? Do we need to, of course, have more boots on the ground? Do we need to change up our leasing approach? Do we need to put in more marketing? Time and budget for construction and reposition is one piece of the puzzle here that can really hinder you. If you expect to do something in 3 months and it takes 5, well, it's hurting your business plan. If you expect to be able to turn 10 units, you're going to do 6, hurts your business plan. If you expect that you're going to be able to get $50 rent bumps and you're only able to get 25, hurts your business plan. So you have to continually be on board to ask that question, to ask how the operations are going against the pro forma. It's a big ship that we have here, right? Unlike a single family house where it's one, you can get a great economies of scale from a multifamily property. But if you're not paying attention, right, and you have a building where maybe you have a big water leak and all of a sudden you're not paying attention 3, 4, 5 months down the road, well, you've just wasted a lot of money. I have a friend who had a property and they were out there doing inspections, about to buy the property, and they saw the guy filling up the pool. And they're like, well, why are you filling up the pool? He's like, oh, I do this every day, right? Well, turns out the water bill was through the roof, right? Because maintenance guy just figured every day you're just supposed to fill up the pool because the pool just drains every day, right? And so, but he learned out there was a leak, a big leak, and then fixed it and cut down their water bill by like 30%, right? Those happen because someone thinks they're doing a good job. No harm in them. They thought they were doing the right thing, and in fact, they were trying to do the right thing. But that was something that was inhibiting the property, and the owner just wasn't paying attention, right? Just wasn't paying attention, and that can be a lot of money. I mean, utilities, we talked about taxes, we talked about insurance, utilities, cost a lot. So if you're not paying attention to that and you're not looking which should it be, right? We talked earlier, what is the market? What is the market warrant here? We like to know what our water cost is or our electricity bill here. Oh, in this market, on average, you should be paying about $50 to $60 for water. Okay, great. So we can track that from investment to investment to say, okay, why is this one so off? What is it that's driving this one so much? We also look for recommendations for other income drivers. Can we add on cable contracts? Can we add on laundry contracts? Can we add on pet fees? Can we add on a pet wash station, right? Can we add on things for the clubhouse? Can we add on short-term rentals, right? Can we do something here that's going to help to empower the investment? And it will fit in the market. Will it fit in the market? Right? I was talking to our friend Jeremiah out there, and he's got short-term leases out there in a state that I was just asking, like, why are they coming, right? But he tested out to see if it works on one, and then it worked on others, and they were showing up for a lot of different reasons, right? Well, you may have a great idea to do it, but you want to test it to make sure it can work. So we like to see what are ideas for other income drivers. We'll get up to a few in a little bit here to see what could potentially work. But you want to say, okay, what could be some other ways to add income? Easiest way is we see other people doing it, and we say, oh, they're doing it, and we see other groups, we're seeing apples for apples, so we can just add those. It happens a lot where complexes just don't pay attention to what's happening in the market, don't add in those pieces, and then for whatever reason, just allow it to happen, right? Maybe they just don't care, property, they're making some money or not, it's just not their thing, right? But maybe if you can go in there and add those pieces, you can make a property that's a single into a double or a double into a home run just by adding in other income drivers. Recommendations on expense curtailing. Do we have the right employee structure? Do we have enough employees? Do we have too many employees? Is there ways we can cut down on our utilities here? Can we have the tenants carry on some of that cost of utilities? Can we put in LED light bulbs, cut down our electric bill? Can we change out the toilets or change out faucets and shower heads for basically aerators to cut down the water bill? Can we replace the windows that are the original windows to stop basically all of the utilities going, all of the hot air and all the AC to go out the windows? Can we do things, control the operations? Can we put in a proper marketing budget? Can we carry forward to have a better spot or a better relationship with our trash company? Can we look at our contracts, right? So we can do better to curtail our expenses. Can we streamline our turn process? Can we streamline our turn process to make it more efficient, right? To make it a shorter process. Remember, one of your biggest costs is the time it takes to get a unit turned and get it rented again, right? Because that unit is vacant, meaning it makes no money, right? So if we don't have an efficient turn process, and every time the unit gets turned or goes vacant, we have to say, oh, okay, what should we do now? Oh, let's get someone out there, right? Oh, okay, they can't come for a week. Then they finally get out there. Okay, I hope we need a quote now. Okay, they take another week and a quote. Okay, they can't get started for 2 weeks, right? Well, we just lost 4 weeks. Nothing's even happened yet, right? So we just lost a full month of the process right there, waiting for them to show up to even start, right? Because we weren't clear on the process throughout. So we want to get ahead of this because, like, okay, that's just one unit. What if you have 200 units? What if you have 50 units, right? You lose that over the whole course of the year. You might lose 20% of your possible revenue just by not having an efficient turn process happen. And facilitating lenders' needs and requests. The lenders will have certain requirements. They may ask for quarterly updates. They may ask for quarterly reporting. They may need to come do inspections if you have certain types of loans for some of the construction you're doing, right? So you will facilitate this property as asset management. Accounting review. You want to understand your cash position and your reserves position, right? You have a budget, you have a process. You want to make sure you have enough money to do this budget, especially if you have some kind of draw process. Typically, the lenders will give draws in arrears, right? So you're going to do the work first. So is that structured right with your construction partners to have enough money to fulfill the needs to get the job done to get to the point of a draw process? Reviewing your accounts receivable and your accounts payable. So are you having things being paid accordingly? Are you collecting on the amount of money that's supposed to be coming in here? Reviewing an available working capital here. Getting back to just your ins and outs to understand your workflow and your owner's equity interest and loan ratio. You want to make sure you're staying in a consistent loan ratio here is that you have the cash flow coming in to, of course, pay down your debt, right? And doing to every point here to meet the owner's needs. Now, if you are the owner operator, it's going to trench your investors here. Are we keeping in line with the expectations of what the property should be doing to fulfill the needs to make distributions accordingly? And upcoming renewals. Noting how the plan goes with renewals. We may have a very extended or very aggressive timeline with our renovations here, but we need to impact how that's going to happen with renewals. If we're going to take over a property and we want to turn the majority of the building in year one, but maybe most of our leases are not going to be able to expire for 7 or 8 months here, well, that's going to really impact our business plan here because we're going to be months out before we can really put things in place. Making sure that's been factored into our analysis, factored into our planning, factored into our pro forma here to make sure that that can happen accordingly here. So we're not assuming that things will happen when in reality a simple look shows that they can't, right? So get back to the basics of say, okay, here's our plan, but can it be implemented? Right? That's why it's really important to get dialed in your market. It's very important to get specific with where we want to be and what we want to do. Because in fact here, if you don't have the teams in place and you're just thinking that this can happen here, you're not going to have that validation. So what are some of these things that we can do in these properties to make them better, right? We've talked a lot on plan, processing, testing, understanding what we can do and making sure it can be done and tracking the plan to make sure that, of course, what's actually on the pro forma is happening in reality. All right, so top income drivers. You want to monitor surrounding properties, surrounding markets, and use the process that they're being implemented. Meaning, easily enough, if the other people are doing it and you're not, well, go do it, right? If it makes your process better, as simple as that. On the other side, you want to look at the rent increases. What are other people doing? What are they doing? And can you do that? Right? We want to know. And is that the actual rent? Is that the effective rent? Or is that the showcase rent? Are they offering other things in there? You know, there are points where I've saw people, you know, come in, you get a TV, right? Like things like that, like have happened in the past. So is that factored into their rent increases here? Additional income that's warranted for the submarket. We talked about the pet fees. We talked about potentially water bill backs. We talked about other things. I've seen utility amenities fees, right? To be able to go and use all the amenities. There's fees for that, right? Contracts for properties. Can you get a cable contract here where you can get additional revenue, whether it's be a bulk contract where you pay all the cable, but then you can bill your tenants a higher fee for using the cable there, or where it will be non-bulk here where you'll get a decorating fee, right? They'll give you a straight fee and you'll get a percentage revenue. Can you get a cable contract on the property here a laundry contract with the property here where you can go and get a facility decorating fee and then also make some of the revenue from the laundry contract? Is there any new value adds warranting additional income? What can you do for the renovation plan to warrant additional income? And what is your tenant process? What is that implementation process? Remember, you're going to have leases here. So as you look at this and say, okay, the leases are going to expire and that's going to impact our ability to add in these additional income. We can't just add these in when there's leases in place. Can you add units? We've taken on properties before that were side by side and both were using a unit for an office, right? So I had two smaller properties side by side, put them together. It's one big property, had a big building in the middle that was used as really a big storage space and the laundry room. It was just too big, right? So we're able to cut that up and make that into partly the office. Got back 2 units. So I basically brought a building, got back one unit, brought another building, got back another unit, and then made this huge wasted space into an office right in the middle, which was better allocated anyway for the office. So we just picked up 2 additional units right there. You think about an additional added unit. Well, think about the price of units today, right? It may cost you $100,000 or $200,000 for a unit there. Just by getting a unit back that was an office before and getting another unit back, I just picked up $200,000 of value on the property just by moving it into a space that wasn't being used well. So can you find spaces to put additional units? I've seen people use unsituated or well or poorly placed commercial spots and turn them into units before. Taking storage space and making sure it was zoned correctly, but turning that into units, right? So can you find additional units? Can you find additional storage? Can you take storage and turning it into garage? Can you take basements and actually turn that into storage, right? Is there other ways that you can add value and find value? You're not only going to benefit the tenants, but also going to create value for the property. Due diligence. So we're going to go through this on a few properties coming up very quickly here in the next few weeks. We're going to review, is there any current litigation, right? Is there any current evictions? Is there a list of personal property, appliances, equipment, or supply that's going to go with the seller? What are the open maintenance requests? Are they handling things accordingly, or is there a laundry list of stuff here that needs to be done that is now deferred? Is there the PPM attorney, right? Who is that person in the process now? Articles of incorporation. Are we doing the formation of legal entity and buying the asset? Engaging our cost seg rep. We use cost segregation across these properties here. So we're going to work with that person here to make sure that they're set up to put that in process so we can have that inflow for year one. Finalizing ownership structure and coordinating the out-of-state closing. All right, some other pieces for increasing the NOI, renovations and repairs, right? How is that going to effectively impact the bottom line? Capturing back in that loss to lease. If you're doing the right thing and you're pushing forward, you're always going to have some loss to lease because you're always going to be trailing with the market, and the market's going to be a good market that's going to constantly be increasing year in year. So you're constantly going to have some loss to lease as you continue to build because the market is a great market because you've done all the work here that we talk about here to find yourself a market that's accelerating. So as that market's accelerating, each year you're constantly able to do the improvements to get to the new market rent. Reducing high expenses through proper management, right? You want to know what is not working effectively. A lot which Chad and I showed on the analyzers, we break down our costs line item by line item, right? So we have our general admin, we have our marketing, we have our contract services, our repairs and maintenance, our turnover, our insurance, and our taxes, and our capital reserves, right? So we want to look at those line items and say, okay, what's out of place on this property? What's out of place, and is there a reason why it's out of place? What can we do to get back to control that fee and get that fee back to being in moderation for where it should be, right? Because that can help reduce our expenses and increase our NOI. Can we bring in other contracts, right? Or other things we need to do? Do we not have enough for landscaping, right? Have we not put in a proper process to make this the best community to live? Is there other things we can do to save on energy, save on water, right? These can be simple things, but when it's a big building, it can go a long way. You can look in your attic space. Is there any insulation up there, right? Is there any insulation keeping in the heat, keeping in the AC? Can you go and insulate water heater pipes here, right? To control on that cost. There's a lot of things. When they do new construction buildings, they'll situate them here where they'll put certain landscaping and certain trees out in front of the building here to keep the sun directly off the building, right? There's ways that things can be engaged here to control the flow of energy, right? To control the flows of water. We'll talk next here on some conservation packages, right? So here's one looking at a flow of water. This is actually one property is now called the 902, but the investment was $27,900, and the estimated utility savings per year was $22,400, right? Increase of property value estimated $345,000. Well, I'd say that's pretty good. Well, pretty good spent, right? I've done this on a couple properties. We did something of a fact on our first property. I think it was somewhere around that 20-something thousand hour range. Again, it actually cut down our water bill plus us fixing some things about 30%. That 30% made the property about $400,000 more valuable, right? Just by changing toilets. What else can improve your bottom line? Effective management. Remember, tenants want to get back to live in a great place, right? They want to live somewhere great. They want to be somewhere where they can feel like it's home. But if they've had an owner who just not fix anything, right? Oh, I've called this guy again. He hasn't come up. Oh, another week's gone by. I've called the guy again. Well, eventually just going to be like, I'm just not going to call anymore, right? Because they've gotten trained that we're all busy. They got a busy life too, right? They've trained that they now call, but no one comes. They just go on to it. They deal with the dripping sink. So if you can come in there and be that great owner who wants to fix stuff, you now have to let them know. You have to allow them to understand that you want to fix stuff, right? Because ultimately they're just going to think same old, right? So getting back and letting them know that you want to fix stuff, that you want to engage, it's going to make the property better, and they'll start treating it better, right? They'll start treating it like a home instead of like a place that they're passing through. But what that does, two parts. They'll take better care of things, right? They'll also let you know so you can fix things. And as it goes, you'll see a flow here where they may just stay longer, right? Because it becomes a good place to live. So that gets back to our biggest cost. Our biggest cost again, turnover, time it takes to get unit leased. One of the best things you can do is get a tenant who is a good tenant to refer other tenants. Because if they do that, they will both now stay longer, right? We'd rather have friends stay with friends, right? Because Peely and I lived in New York City. It was like lived in a huge high-rise, probably 1,000 people in there. Never knew anybody, right? It was just coming on different worlds. So did we feel any affinity to the property? No, it was just a building, right? But if you can get people that live and it's their home and they feel like you're decorating, you see things out for Christmas, and the kids start going out to play, like they're creating a community, right? And effectively that now, yes, great, we make more money, but it's a great feeling because we're making it a better place to live, right? We talked about bringing our kids over to these properties. It's pretty cool. We live here, locally now because we can go by some of their properties and they can see how they've improved. We see we brought them and it just didn't look that great. No one's really outside. It was just kind of beat up, right? Now they see it. There's, playgrounds, dog parks, these little things happening, people outside doing stuff, because they now live there, right? They're not going there to just sleep at night, right? And so when you do that and you see that flow, yes, it looks good, but now it also makes the property more money. It also trends to a bigger bottom line, which trends to better returns, which trends to a better investment. It also makes the property itself sustain longer, right? We've all seen the things that are well taken care of versus things that are not. You can have the same building side by side, one from 2000 and one from 2000. One is complete disarray and the other one is not, right? There's a lot of parts of that process and it goes on both sides. We find when we take over a property, it's plug and play here. I'm doing pretty good on my slides. It's plug and play that there's two pieces of the puzzle. It's either a poor building, it's usually because of bad management, or there's usually bad management, and that trends to be a poor building, right? Both sides lead to the other. And so you'll see both sides. One is going to basically trip to the other. So wherever it is, you want to see on both sides what's causing it, right? Some more energy savings processes, AC tune-ups, weatherizing, plumbing, lighting. I was talking to a friend before, he was talking about Airbnbs, and he was saying it makes a ton of money, but if he goes away for a few weeks, he had a problem where one of the pipes was leaking, right? I was like, well, you can put leak detectors on those things so you're aware of those. He was like, no. I was like, well, if you could do that, right? Because now he was gone, and for the 3 weeks that he didn't have a tenant in there, they didn't realize a pipe had burst and it cost thousands of dollars, right? Get aware of these things. You want to do some of these parts to understand if there's heavy flow of water, right? There's actually flows that we don't realize, but there's so much air bubbles that are in our water lines, and we get charged for that, right? They're charged for air lines. So there's actually ways you can put bubble flows on there that it can reduce the flow of the bubbles within the line. It can cut down our water bill, right? There's a lot of pretty interesting stuff happening these days. Some of these buildings, if you're building new or have a newer building, maybe it's already implemented, right? So you do these things that actually help curb your cost, right? Get back, because you're just paying for all this excess usage. Because the tenants, maybe they're not thinking about it, or, but they leave the light on. Hallways, right? The hallways, most of the time, people aren't in there all night, so are the lights on all night, or are they essential lights, right? Or can you do things to make the building be more efficient, right? And if you can do this, it's going to help control your costs. Again, get down. Tax, insurance, and utilities, really non-controllable expenses until you do. Some other little things. Can you add some certain little amenities here? Add a little pergola, it gives a little landscape to the park. Put a little grilling station, make a little dog park, right? Instead of having people just let their dogs out anywhere, create a little area, creates more community. It continues to push through here. We got a couple properties here. So Valley View. This opportunity to upgrade the property. We're focusing on interior enhancements. 1931 building, older building. Engaged the current property manager or prior property manager just wasn't really doing a good job. They had a maintenance guy that was doing very, very, very horrible repairs here. So it left us with a lot of fixing to do, but it was very easy of a bar to excel past by just going in there and starting to fix stuff. Some of the value adds is about $150 to $200 rent bump based on what was there now. We're able to start building back water, right? Building back water on new leases here. So we're not doing a RUBS program, we're just doing a flat bill back. Historic tax credits. We have not done this, but we have the opportunity to go and use, there's a state and a federal tax credit. So we have the opportunity, if we wanted to implement and go after tax credits. It wasn't something we want to do because it put us on a register, and it was a piece of the puzzle that was another option that we could go out there and look for, right? Branding. Put in better planning, better marketing, get a website, get a presence. Sometimes the only thing you have to do is just, put yourself out there, get a Google page, right? Get a Facebook page, right? No one can find you. I mean, most people, we find everything on the internet now, right? So if you can't Google and find the property easily, like, how do people find this thing? So you want to be able to get out the property, and it can be pretty simple if you just say, hey, can I find this property? Right? If you can find the property pretty easily, it helps you increase your marketing. Month-to-month leases. 19 to 36 units were on month-to-month, so we had to rectify on that. Some of the exterior improvements, we had to do some foundation work. We had to go after some new roofs, different paint scheme just to improve the building, add in a few different areas that could really spruce up the entire look of the property. It's a really good area, but we were bringing down the area, right? So that's a good thing. So now, great area. Now we just have to come up to meet the area, right? So you want to look for how you can do different things like that. These are some of the top expense drivers here that we like to put in here. Management efficiencies we talked about. Economies of scale would be that fact here where we talked about having two buildings and we got back the units by putting in the office into the laundry room. Also, you can look at if you have a maintenance guy on a 24 unit, but that really doesn't trend well, or you're spending too much. But maybe the management company has 5 24 units around, and you can pay to have a manager be split, or a maintenance guy split up between the properties. Or you can have multiple properties and have your team run out of a central location to meet all those properties you can cut down. Can you review on your contracts here? Are you paying too much year on year out for your landscaping, or for your garbage, right? For your waste, or for your snowplow, right? Are you paying too much for these services based on the market? Can you get better referrals? We talked a lot to utility efficiencies and a green program implementation and tenant training. As poor as it sounds, it's because probably they've just been never given a process, right? You know, we come into a lot of deals where the owners or the prior owners just had all these handshakes. Oh, you want to pay the second Thursday of February every third month? That's fine. Just let Johnny know, right? And you're just like, okay, like we need to get back to a system here. You know, here's the process that goes in. First of the month comes, late fee goes out the 5th of the month. Depending on what it is, you get filed on the 7th of the month, 9th of the month, whatever it is by that in the state rules, right? Get in a process here so everybody gets in a timeline. We need predictability, right? Remember, we're running a business here. So we all have patterns. It's nothing here of any emotions here. We want this to be a great place for you to live. We want you to have a great place that you can come home to. But we also, for that to happen, need to have a revenue generating asset. And to do that, we need to have predictability. If I don't know when the money's coming, I can't be predictable in how we do our repairs and pay everybody who's going to be working there. So we want to get back to tenant training. That also goes in line to this how you do repairs, right? We want them to know that you're there to fix things now, that you're going to come in and get things done in a timely manner, and you're going to take care of them, right? Because we want them to treat it like a home so it can perform and operate better. So some things we do on closing day. We walk every unit. We inspect for things. I would walk every unit on closing day. Have your team do it, because you'll find that you walk during due diligence and 45 days later, a lot can happen, right? So you don't want to wait for that last point. You want to have the takeover for tenants here. You want to go and have the implementation of your business plan, right? Day one, what are you waiting for? Let's go, right? So you want to have a plan out of the gate to get yourself going. You want to address outstanding maintenance items, right? If there's a list of maintenance items that are going to carry through into your closing, make sure what they are. Start rekeying office and common areas, employing any of the new vendors, right? If you're going to change over on landscaping, change over on trash, change whatever's going to be the change, get that implemented right away. So the system with the tenants, there's no hiccups in the systems with the tenants here. They have a clean process going. All right, so we're going to jump in quickly. Let's see what I got coming here. All right, first deal. 94 unit, Louisville, Kentucky, $2.3 million. Purchase price, value add upside, right? All over the place. The property, you had the same building surrounding us, like a replica of the building all around us. Our building had like 7 or 8 of the units vacant. They were all really kind of good shape, and they just weren't rented. But if you go to all the other buildings around there, all the same buildings, not done any better than ours, they're all 100% occupied, and all the tenants are paying $100 more. Came in there, this leasing person was she was watching Dog the Bounty Hunter. She wanted nothing to do with us. The phone was ringing. She wasn't picking up the phone. She was annoyed we were from there, right? Well, no wonder the units weren't getting leased. They have a hard time collecting rent. Well, to find out here that the owner had passed away, older gentleman here, his kids were running it. His kids didn't trust the leasing person, so she couldn't collect money. So all these people had to go and take money all the way across town to drop it off. So the people, and I think there was like a small window to do it, right? So they just were never doing it, right? So they're having a problem because they were making the process hard on the tenants, right? And then they weren't empowering the leasing person, or maybe they had the wrong leasing person, it looked like, to get it done. So our plan was pretty simple. Just get in there. 1, pick up the phone. 2, we never even had a market on this property. It's such a crazy walkthrough of traffic here. They're able to just start getting the rents that were already proven by all the properties around. There were $100+ more by simply just picking up the phone and just leasing units. Almost the simplest thing in the world, right? But they were creating layers. They were in their own way of creating the process. Then we just had to match the other units, right? All the properties around accepted pets. This property did not accept pets. However, when we did our walk, they had 6 dogs and a snake, right, in the units. So we just started billing for pets, started charging pet fees, fit right in, right? So all the things, like this simple stuff can happen. Just pay attention to what's happening around and understand sometimes owners are just in their own way. We had a pretty interesting loan at the time. It was 7/6 ARM through Fannie Mae. Equity was syndicated. This was our first deal we had raised for. We raised about $700,000, which, at the time sounded like a lot. For some of you will sound like a lot, but we had done this work prior, so we raised this in like a day. Because we didn't raise it that day, we had talked to our network beforehand. So when we got the property, we're like, hey, we had shown like the avatar of this property before, right? To all of our friends in the network. Like, it wasn't this property, but it was like property like this, right? Because remember, Peely and I, we're bartenders. Like, we're working, like, we're doing all this other stuff. So our friends have seen us do stuff. We've been consistent in how we've shown up, but now we're doing this. So we had talked to them and explained to them, showed them what we were going to do. So when we brought back this investment, it wasn't the first time they were seeing this unicorn, right? They knew what it was going to be, right? And so when we came back, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's it. So that's why we raised the money very easily, because we had already done the work. It was just telling them, like, now it's time, right? That's how you can get yourself to make the flow work very well. Well, did it all go right? A lot of stuff went right. In fact, we transitioned new management, turned about 65 units, completed 6 and 12-month repairs that were lender required in 5 months. Tenant referral program I talked about before had this happen, where it had a lot of tenants start telling their friends come by. Probably started being better all the way around. We added in a move-in fee, added income to the bottom line, installed a water plan, saved about 30% off the bill, $325,000 more in value, instituted pet fees. So, of course, everything went magical, right? Well, no. What went wrong? 3 deaths of natural causes, right? 2 in the same week. I point that natural causes, right? It was crazy. I learned that in Kentucky, you actually have to go through the eviction process if no one claims the person, right? So it was a very interesting thing, but with the right team in place, right? But it's very interesting when you think about stuff. You're like, man, it's very unfortunate, but like you don't think about that as part of your process, right? 15 HVAC replacements happened in a very short timeline, right? So typically we'd allocate on this maybe like six a year, depending on the property. We had drug and gun activity on a neighboring building. Nothing to do with us, nothing to do with our building. Again, government horrible at operating properties. It was the government-owned housing. Some guy who didn't live there was over there creating a bunch of trouble. We had the point, it was making our building unsafe, right? Because our tenants were getting worried. They're like, man, there's like all the spots. They've never been like this, right? So we had a unit that had just gone vacant. We were turning it. And so how are we doing? Yeah, Bill's going to freak on time, but we got time for a 5-minute story. So I'll make it 20 seconds. You went 8 minutes over. I mean, I get bad. Okay, real quick. So remember, there's always a yes if you believe there's a yes. It was going to be a building. Nobody was going to do it. The government didn't do it. So I just kept leaving messages. Hey, I need you to call me back because I'm worried someone's going to die. That gets you a call back, right? So I finally get someone to call me back from the city. They said, hey, what's up? I say, hey, this building across the street. Oh, we know that building. Well, all this is happening. It's finger tenants. Then I said, okay, you can call up the person who helps us from the police side. Okay, I call up. I can't get a call back. Call another message. Hey, I'm worried someone's going to die. Will you call me back? Okay, so they call me back. I say, hey, listen, I got this unit. We're renovating. If it backs up to that building, can you guys come and you can do like a stakeout? And they're like, I don't know. Call this other guy. So I call this other guy. I say, hey, listen, call me back. I think someone's going to die, right? So now the sergeant calls back. Lo and behold, they come in and for 3 weeks do a stakeout and arrest everybody in the building. I was like, sweet, right? And up front, you just keep doing that. But the cool part about it is like, what does it do? It gets us back to a better place to live, a better community, right? Just making a couple calls and just keep thinking out of the box. But things like that, right? It doesn't always have to be bad. Like bad things will happen. Can you have a problem? Think and be a solution-oriented person, right? And that's part of asset management. So quickly in line, gas line problem, nothing to do with us. Utilities had the team in place to fix it. What else went wrong? We talked about this, Louisville Metro. What else went right? We had that, put a laundry contract in, got a bunch of additional revenue, increased rents well above pro forma. After 1 year, refinance very quickly, and we actually got to the value that they were trying to sell us at originally. We got this at almost half price when we brought this. After 1 year, gave about 75% of capital back to investors, and we sold it in 2 years at our 5-year pro forma number. So great deal right there, right? And I made 5 minutes into 93 seconds. So think about it. Asset management's a lot of fun. You can make a great property and you can make a mediocre property based on your plan and process. But you can take a property and you can find all different ways to win. But it's all about testing, thinking outside the box, and looking for solutions to continue forward. All right. Thank you so much, guys.